Hi, welcome. Today's video is about Émilie du Châtelet, who was Voltaire's lover for many years. I'm going to tell you about her interests, her devotion to self-education and self-study, and unfortunately her tragic ending. At the end of the video, we will be looking at what we can learn from this amazing woman and how we can implement this into our own lives. Émilie's interests weren't just academic, they were for her a way of living. She lived such a cultivated, intentional, curiosity-driven life, and I hope she will inspire you as much as she inspired me. If you think you have a lot of interests, well, let me give you Émilie's list. She was interested in mathematics, physics, astronomy, philosophy, science. She translated things. She was also fond of logic and reasoning. She loved classic literature and reading widely in her 5 languages that she knew. She loved French literature and wrote essays, commentaries, and letters. She was interested in salon culture. She hosted and participated in salons where she discussed ideas with leading thinkers. She wrote essays, scientific commentary, personal reflections, and she loved learning languages. She actually knew 5. But the list doesn't end here, because this is a list of her passions and hobbies. Reading, studying late into the night, playing cards and games, music, she played the harpsichord, fashion and elegance, she was known for her style and presence at Versailles, horseback riding, fencing, and social conversation. I actually discovered Émilie du Châtelet while I was researching Voltaire. I love him as an author, and I highly recommend you reading his work, his most famous work, Candide. And before I knew it, I was looking into the life of Émilie. I was immediately intrigued. And of course, I had to find myself a book to read. Now, at my local library, I was lucky. They had the book Passionate Minds. I'm from Belgium, so this is not the original title. The original title is Passionate Minds. And this is a biography of Émilie and Voltaire. I got so much out of this book. It doesn't only describe both of their lives, it also gives you an impression of the time period they lived in, the constrictions, the negatives, the positives. It was such an interesting read. As I was researching her, I immediately knew that I wanted to talk about this amazing woman on my channel. Let me first talk about her background, her childhood, her life as an adult, and then we're gonna go over the things that we can learn from her. Her most recognized achievement to this day is a work called Institution de Physique, which means Foundations of Physics. And this work covers a wide range of topics, including the principles of knowledge, the existence of God, hypothesis, space, time, matter, and the forces of nature. She was obsessed with Isaac Newton, and she actually wrote an extensive commentary on his Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. Also interesting is that many of her ideas were worked into the Encyclopédie of Diderot and d'Alembert, and some of the articles in the Encyclopédie are immediate copies of her work. She lived in the 18th century from 1706 until 1749. Let's talk about her childhood. So when she was a child, her father very quickly saw that she was going to be a very special lady. He made sure that she was trained in fencing and riding, and then later on he made sure that she got the tutors that she needed. She was a very curious child, always asking questions about history, court life, the stars, religion, and he arranged her a tutor in astronomy. Her mother, however, wasn't that supportive. She wanted to send her daughter to a convent. Now, the stories weren't that positive about convents. For example, one of the daughters of Louis XV was sent to the convent, and she had anxiety attacks for the rest of her life. Now, luckily, her father didn't listen, and she was educated at home. By the age of 12, she was fluent in Latin, in Greek, in Italian, and in German. She was very lucky that her father arranged an education in literature, mathematics and science. In her adult life, she loved translating works. She published Greek and Latin plays and philosophy into French. She liked to dance, she sang opera, she played the harpsichord, and she was also an amateur actress. There's actually a story about her where she tried to accompany Voltaire to an intellectual gathering, and she was refused because she was a woman. And the day after, she returned dressed in men's clothing. She wrote a critical analysis of the entire Bible, and she also translated a work called The Fable of the Beast by Bernard Mandeville. She wrote a preface to the book arguing for women's education, and I am going to read that to you right now. May 12, 1738. I feel the full weight of the prejudice which so universally excludes us from the sciences. It is one of the contradictions in life that has always amazed me, seeing that the law allows us to determine the fate of great nations, but that there is no place where we are trained to think. Let the reader ponder why, at no time in the course of so many centuries, a good tragedy, a good poem, a respected tale, a fine painting, a good book on physics has ever been produced by a woman. Why these creatures, whose understanding appears in every way similar to that of men, seem to be stopped by some irresistible force, but until they do, women will have reason to protest against their education. I am convinced that many women are either unaware of their talents by reason of the fault in their education, or that they bury them on account of prejudice for want of intellectual courage. My own experience confirms this. Chance made me acquainted with men of letters who extended the hand of friendship to me, and then began to believe that I was a being with a mind. She also loved to gamble, and at a certain moment she had won a lot of money. She spent everything on books. And the mother commented, "My daughter is insane because she spent all of her money on books." Émilie and Voltaire read together. They read excerpts aloud to each other, and they had a coffee break every morning at 11 o'clock. She preferred fresh fruit and Voltaire really enjoyed his coffee. She also wrote letters to her most intimate friends, and especially her favorite brother, about things that kept her mind busy, about her interests and passions, and just a variety of topics. Now, before I move on to what we can learn from Émilie, I want to give you a quote. So she believed that to be happy, one must have freed oneself of prejudice, one must be virtuous, healthy, have tastes and passions, and be susceptible to illusions. She mentions many things one needs for happiness, but emphasizes the necessity of illusions and that one should not dismiss all illusions. One should not abandon all illusions because they can bestow positivity and hope, which can ameliorate one's well-being. However, du Châtelet also admonishes against trusting all illusions because many illusions are harmful to oneself. They may cause negativity through a false reality, which can cause disappointment or even limit one's abilities. This lack of self-awareness from so many illusions may cause one to be self-deceived. She suggests a balance of trusting and rejecting illusions for happiness so as not to become self-deceived. What can we learn from Émilie du Châtelet? First of all, a very important note that I want to make is that Émilie had all her free time to spend it as she wanted to spend it. So she could devote entire days on study and education. Now, most of us are working all day, and when we get home, we get to do our household chores, and afterwards we are so exhausted that we cannot spend time on any intellectual activity. And I want to emphasize that it's not about the amount of time that she had, but how she used her time, how she approached learning, and how she didn't let herself be stopped even though she lived in a time where women could not do what they wanted. She took her life into her own hands, and that is, to me, very inspiring. And of course, I hope this can inspire you to continue to read by candlelight once the children are asleep, or encourage you to scribble notes between chores, or start journaling, or start looking into topics that have always interested you. You can have reflective moments when you fold the laundry, or you can have deep conversations while doing the dishes. You can copy inspiring passages from books that you read into a dedicated notebook. This isn't about dedicating full days on educating yourself. So yes, du Châtelet had a lot of time to do the things that she wanted to do, but she inspires me not because she had so much time, but because she was dedicated and passionate, and she lived the life that she wanted to live. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get into it. First of all, you can build your own education at any age, in any circumstance. She remained curious all her life. She kept learning and she kept challenging herself. Number 2, intellectual joy is a form of self-care. She believed that happiness came from understanding the world, from cultivating the mind, and from pursuing meaningful questions. For her, studying wasn't a duty, but a source of joy and pleasure. Number 3 is deep focus. She would be up sometimes until 3 or 4 in the morning, focusing on one single subject, being fully absorbed by it. And this really stands out to me because she was living in a time where there weren't many distractions, and she could go on a studying spree. Now, nowadays, it's much harder to focus deeply on one task. We often multitask or are distracted by technology. And this just has to remind me of how important immersion is, how important deep focus is. If you really want to focus deeply on a subject, which is recommended, then you need to spend that time on the subject completely immersed with no distractions. And also, before moving on to the other subject or the other thing, for example, when you're reading a book, instead of moving on to the next book, you stop and reflect. If you watch a movie, you don't go to the next movie, you stop and reflect. This is getting harder and harder, especially because of short content. We swipe and swipe and swipe, and it's like every 10 seconds that there's new information coming to us. We cannot process this much information, and even if you would consume educational content, you need to allow your brain to process what it just learned. Number 4, learning is freedom. She lived in a time where she was very restricted, and still she took her life into her own hands and she did what she wanted to do. Don't let anyone stop you. Don't let anyone tell you what to do. Take your life into your own hands, and just we shouldn't limit ourselves. Be curious. You don't need to be an academic to devote time to educate yourself further. And finally, Émilie shows us that we can be many things at once. Do what you want to do in this life. If something interests you, learn about it. Take the chance, follow workshops, learn a skill that you've always wanted to learn. It's not because you're an adult that you now have to stop being curious, stop asking questions, and stop learning new skills. I highly recommend a biography written by David Badanis. This was an amazing read again, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion and learning about Émilie du Châtelet. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.